Who doesn't want to know what their pets are thinking? Not only does my guest today communicate with animals, she even communicates with plants. We get into the different ways different species communicate, how she came to discover she had this skill, and get into deeper topics such as how to support our animal friends during their end of life and loss, whether it's their human or another animal companion. Today's guest is Jessica Lindsey. She's a trauma informed energy healer, an animal communicator, and clairvoyant. Welcome, Jessica. Learn how to live embodied. Your life is about to unwind. Uncover new tools and start healing. Leave trauma and tension behind. Isn't it great, laid open? Let all your desires come true. How can you live laid open? Imagine yourself brand new. Imagine yourself brand new.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you and your audience today.
We met at a workshop of a friend of Tara,
Mhm.
and I lost your contact information, and it took a while for Tara to get it to me, but I'm so thrilled that we're getting to have this conversation. And I know a lot of my friends and clients are excited to listen because you have a lot to offer.
Yes. Yeah. I think that, animal communication in particular is a topic that everyone is very interested in because there's just so much that we often want to know about our animals and the unseen world and animals that have passed. There's so much information to be shared in that regard. So I'm excited to share that with you and to share that with everyone today.
That's definitely a topic that I want to dive into. I'm thinking it would be great to start with getting a sense of when did you discover that you had the ability to communicate with animals and plants as well, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can communicate with everything. Yeah.
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 It's a lot
Yeah,
coming.
well, I'll give a little background in that I did grow up with stories from my father saying that when he was a child, he used to try to practice being telepathic with his brother. They would go in opposite sides of the room, and, like, I remember him saying something about, like, one would think of a word and see if the other person could get it. As a child, I didn't ever think that I could communicate with animals. That wasn't really on my radar, but I certainly wished that I could and dreamt that I could, like the little girl that's like, "I wanna be able to talk to the horses
Mhm.
or talk to my cat or talk to my dog." And I also grew up with a mother that was very energetically sensitive, and so, like, I kinda had, like, a sense of that, but I honestly, at the time, as a child, thought that maybe those things had skipped me. Like, I didn't really have an awareness because there just wasn't a language, in my household or kind of like just back then during that time frame. There wasn't really a whole lot of language of how to communicate about intuitive abilities. It was all very hush hush because there was just so much still persecution energy that just kind of existed like in the collective of everybody. And so it wasn't until I sort of had like a body health crisis where I had gone to a lot of different medical professionals and I was just like I am still not getting to the bottom of these things
Mm.
and I don't know why they're happening and I don't know why no one can tell me something that's actually going to make it better. And then I ended up literally just kind of pleading with the universe like I think I need like an energy healer or somebody like that. And I had never worked with anybody like that before. I mean, I was doing yoga, so it's not like I wasn't aware of like energy and stuff like that, but I didn't know about it related to my own being. And when I started going into that and that kind of manifested for me, and I manifested, my first intuitive development teacher, I realized that I was incredibly empathic and that some of the reasons I was having the issues I was having was because I was picking up on other people's energy and I never knew how to manage that. And because in my ancestral lineage is a lot of trauma, that sort of like it sort of gave me an energy body structure that was just very open to everything without realizing that that's what was happening. So I was kind of like having experiences, but didn't have words for them, didn't have names for them, didn't know what was going on. And so that's kind of like the start of that journey. And then once I trained a lot in clairvoyance and energy healing, then as kind of a gift to myself, I was like, let's see if I can communicate with animals. And so I was sitting in one of those like saunas where just your head's sticking out, like those infrared saunas. And I decided I was going to connect with my rabbit Felorian, who is here somewhere in the room with me. And I was able to, just from the intention of wanting to do so. And so that kind of started that path for me, recognizing that this was something that I knew how to do. And so I pursued training with people to kind of learn more about it. And I already had the background of like a decade of training in clairvoyance and energy healing. And so it was just kind of like a natural progression for me to be able to add that additional skill set onto it. And then also to recognize that it is a different skill set. It's a different skill set than being a psychic or an energy healer. Yeah, telepathy is a very different thing, but uses the same tools. So it's been a fascinating journey for me.
And just also to get even more granular, if you can explain a little bit about the different clairs, right? Clairsentience, clairvoyance, and just making those distinctions that you're starting to touch into regarding
Yeah.
telepathy being its own thing.
Yeah. So I think that when people start to dive into wanting to learn about their own intuition and how to tap into their intuitive abilities, they will find that there's a particular clair ability, or you could just say simply like an extended sense that they are very good at using or is more kind of clear and open to them. Some people talk about this in terms of like each of the chakras having a particular like extrasensory ability, and some people's have like a very strong third eye extrasensory ability, or some people have more of an auditory hearing of an extrasensory something. Some people have it more as a feeling, like they get specific feelings in their body or shivers or like a warm fuzzy feeling to get information. You can pretty much think of it like what all the senses that you have that are your normal eyes of seeing and hearing and smelling and touch and taste, that all of those senses are also intuitive senses, that you can get that same information without the physical stimuli of seeing the thing in front of you or hearing the person talk in front of you or feeling the specific emotion or whatever it is. So when you dive into learning these different skill sets or opening these different intuitive abilities, eventually you can get to the point where you can get all of them online and all of them active. And once all of them are online and all of them are active, then you have a really great skill set to be able to communicate fully with other beings, because other beings experience their life in sometimes very different ways than humans do. And so a particular animal may be sharing their experience through smell or through taste or through, some sort of physical sensation. And so that's kind of where like you can be like a psychic by just being a very, very strong in one of these skill sets. Like you can have a deep sense of knowing that just comes to you and you know the information and you can give that out to another person. But when you're working with animals, it's like you kind of have to have everything on board and aligned And often when people think that they can't connect with their animals or with their favorite tree or their favorite plant or whatever that might be, it's just simply because one of those energy centers hasn't been developed yet. So you can just sort of think like, I've just taken the time to develop all the energy centers and have them more open and available to me. And that's kind of a little bit different than when I was just working as a clairvoyant and an energy healer. I didn't have all of those centers open. I didn't need to. But when I started to work with animals, then it became very, very clear when I was not receiving information through the way that they were trying to share that information.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah.
There's so much and so many different directions we could go in. I love it. Yeah, so, just to also relate it back to working with humans as well, I have clients, for instance, like I actually have all of those online. And so you can take for granted and assume if you have the ability to see things very visually that other people do, and just kind of
Mhm.
keeping in mind guided meditation is not everybody's bag. Or I've had clients where I'm doing body work with them and a song keeps playing in their mind, right? And it's like, what's the phrase that you're hearing? And that's
Mhm.
information that's coming to you. And so much of it feels like people trusting the information they're receiving, that we're all receiving information all the time. And then just being able to have enough training or practice or self trust, right? Like developing that self trust to not deny or dismiss the information that you're getting.
Yeah, I think what's tricky with the cultural ideas that we have, at least in North America, not everybody has these, but there's this idea that being intuitive is something extra magical, extra special, extraordinary. And I just want to make it really clear that all animals, including humans in the category of animals, all have the ability to be telepathic. And so it's not something, as much as it's fun to be like, "Oh, I feel magical and special about this, that I have this skill set," that it really is something that everybody can do. Everybody can do. Like, there's not. Go
Can I
ahead.
pause you?
Yeah.
I'm hearing, um, initially I thought it was like a bird, but for this last section when you've been speaking, there was a lot of noise. And I don't know
Okay. I think it might be my
that.
birds.
It is. You do have birds.
Yeah,
Are
it
they
is birds.
okay?
Like,
They're speaking, but they stopped right when you stopped
I
talking.
know, they get excited. They get excited when we're talking.
Okay, yeah, they're totally that's what I was like,
Yeah,
"I'm
that's what
hearing
they're
birds. Are there
Okay,
birds?"
yeah, yes, there's definitely birds.
So years ago, I was in Hawaii and I had this experience of laying on a towel out in the yard, and I could hear this, like, this high-pitched chatter, and I was, like, looking around, "What is that?" And I put my head down again, and it started again, and then I, like, lifted the towel back, and there were all these ants. Like, am I hearing the air? What's happening? And that was, like, just now, I was like, "What is going on? I can hear something," so I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah, we'll see how they do. They do get rather excited when I talk about animal communication, so they kinda wanna join in to help.
I can still hear them. They're like,
Yeah.
"We are on board."
Yeah, they're on board, yeah. They like to get excited about it. Let me just connect with them momentarily,
Okay.
see if there's anything that they feel they need to share as to why they are making someone. So give me just a
That's
second.
cool. Yeah, let's just be with it.
Okay, so they're sharing this is a very important topic. They want everyone to know that it's very important that I tell everyone how intelligent birds are. And if you can hear them now, it's because they're very much in agreement with that. Do you wanna come to me? Is there something else you wanna share that's so important that you need to interrupt? Okay. So my budgies, their names are Ellie and Nala, and it's very important. They want everyone to know that oftentimes we look you're not helping when you interrupt. Can we on the camera? No? Okay. Okay. They are wanting everyone to know that oftentimes we in look at animals as not as intelligent as we are. And it's very important that they want us to understand that they are just as intelligent, that they have so much wisdom to share, and that their perspectives on life and living and life purpose is very valid.
I had a parakeet when I was
Yeah.
5 named Mickey, and I got this little bird when it had, like, barely had any feathers, and it would play cards with me. It was like I loved that bird. So
Oh,
I can just totally appreciate it.
yeah.
That was my little companion at that age.
That's so wonderful. That's so wonderful. Oh, and you mentioning about, like, hearing the ants.
Oh,
I have had some of the most interesting experience with ants, especially those, like, little, like, sugar ants that kinda tend to come into the house. I had been gone on vacation for, like, a week or so, and when I came back, they had created a little trail right across an area where we were gonna be walking through over and over and over again. And so I sat down on the floor and I placed my hands on the floor,
mm,
and I told them, I said, I don't mind sharing with you, but this particular path that you're on, creating this little path through here, we're going to be walking through this over and over again. And I'm really, really concerned that many of you might get injured or might die if you continue using this trail. Is there any way that you can use a trail that is underneath the floor or, something else different so that you don't get injured? And then I just got up and went about what I was doing, and 20 minutes later, they had all gone away.
mhm.
They had all gone away. And then when I went into my meditation, like, later that day, the ants, like, kind of the consciousness of the whole group of ants came to thank me. And when they came to thank me, they had so much gratitude because they are often poisoned. And we don't there's certain behaviors that we tend to do just because, it's just kind of like the normal thing to do. It's like, oh, insects, if you don't want them in your home, set some ant trap or something like that. And so they had this, like, enormous level of gratitude that was overwhelming. It brought me to tears how immense it was, their gratitude for me taking the time to ask them and suggest something different, and that they could make an adjustment instead of being killed. And so it was just like it was such a profound experience for me because
Mhm.
I had never connected with at that time, this was years ago, but I had never connected with insects in that way. And, the all of the insects that I have connected with since then, they just have the most special kind of love to share. It really is magical. And they're such amazing teachers, the insects. Like, I had this time frame where I had to go out and I was taking care of a neighbor's chickens. To take care of the chickens, I had to go through this area that had a lot of plants. And I connected with the plants and asked permission to cut down some of the plants so I could more easily get to the chicken coop so that I could take everybody in and out in the morning and in the evening. And I didn't think about the insects when I was doing that. I didn't think about the fact that this was their home. And as I was, chopping stuff down kind of haphazardly, just because I had that permission to from the plants, I got a warning buzz from a bee. And then I got another warning buzz from a bee. And then I got another warning buzz from a bee, to the point where I was like, oh, I gotta leave. And then the next day I went back out there and I stood amongst all these wild plants and saw that during the day it was just humming with all of these wild bees, so many wild bees. And I went to them and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I didn't think of you, and I would love to have a conversation with you about this, because I do need to be able to get to the chickens safely, and I do need to be able to clear a path. And I had asked the plants for permission, and in the most loving way, they made it very clear to me that by only asking the permission of the wild plants, I was only thinking of like half of the equation of what was going on in that wild environment. And that those bees were the stewards of those flowers and those plants, and that they actually could feel the plants, and they knew when the plants were being cut down, even when they weren't necessarily on those plants, because they're kind of ground bees that nest in the ground. So it was such a profound experience, and a real kind of like learning for me of the recognition of like, oh, I was just like gonna whack those and I didn't think of them,
It sounds like there are real teachers around our interconnection, and that we are part of an ecosystem. And because we are bigger, we make assumptions. It's like, what's funny is, as women, we can talk about men and their sense of entitlement.
Mhm.
And here's the reality, is that humans have a sense of entitlement.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
absolutely. It's such an interesting thing, the level of entitlement that we as humans kind of feel. I'm always humbled by the plants and the animals and the insects and everything that's flying and crawling and under the ground and everything, because it's like it really does, any part of you that might have some ego about something, when you communicate with a plant or an animal, it's like they're very clear to just like call you out on your crap.
I have to ask, because I thought you were going to go in this direction when you were talking about chickens. I have a big garden, and, as many gardeners have a certain relationship to slugs and snails.
Mhm.
And so, I am feeling inspired to go and have a conversation with them. Do you have a garden? How do slugs and snails communicate? Is it sending through images? Is it through like what's the strategy there?
Yeah. So slugs and snails have a very interesting sensory experience with the world. And I would say, all beings have their own kind of like sensual nature, and that expresses in all different sorts of ways. But I would say slugs and snails have some of the most intensely sensual experiences with everything that they are on, because of their body styles. So because they are sliding on the ground on that mucus layer, it's like they are like deeply in a love relationship with every single thing
Mm.
that they are on and every single thing that they touch. And the first time that I communicated with a slug, actually, I was blown away by the intensity of what they feel, just like being on a piece of wood,
Mm.
being on a log, being on a plant. It's like when you talk about like blissful, ecstatic sensuality, that is what slugs and snails experience at all moments of their life.
I'm just like picturing these slugs as the tantra teachers of nature, and that they're just like They're like, and I once one day I was collecting slugs out of my garden or snails in the morning, and these snails, there was a snail on the top of a piece of jasmine, and I didn't even know. I mean, normally I'm like looking down or I'm looking on a tree, and it was like there were these snails at the very tippy top of and then it was like moving in this swaying way, like it was doing this dance or like, ode to the sun. It's really beautiful,
Yes.
but I love that. I love that. Yeah, they're like lubricated at all times.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And they also, like, in terms of their own reproductive mating, like, they stay in a state of, like, kind of sexual bliss with who they're mating with for an extended period of time. So they really do have something to share with us about, like, fully being in the moment, fully being present with whatever it is that you are in contact with,
Mhm.
whether that is another another snail, another human, whether it's just your feet on the ground. It's like, how into your sensual nature can you be? And I don't even just mean like in more of like a sexual way, but just in like the full feeling of your being and your senses of touch, and like, can you fully like experience the world in the moment? So they truly are teachers. But it is also valid to say that if as you are a gardener and you're the steward of particular plants and the protector and the caregiver of particular plants, whether it's just for their beauty or for food or whatever, that there does sometimes have to be a conversation with some of these other organisms that want to partake in the abundance that you're creating in your garden. And so that may mean needing to sit down with them and just say, "Hey, like, y- I really love these plants and these flowers, and not that I'm not happy to share, but you can't eat all of them because this is something that's me cultivating my creativity and my creative expression, and I don't want that to be destroyed."
Yeah.
And it is perfectly okay if for some reason, sitting with them in kind of like a meditative state and getting to know them and having that conversation, or maybe asking them like, why are you eating these particular plants? It's always a good idea to, when you're sitting with an animal, and especially if they are doing something that is not something that you feel is conducive to what you're trying to create in your life, to ask them why they are acting in the way that they're acting. There might be a reason why there's a ton of them in a particular place. Maybe they're trying to help nurture the soil in some way because there's something that's depleted. And so by them eating a particular kind of plant and their excrements being in that particular area, they're really just trying to, help facilitate bringing balance back. And once you know that and you can assist in bringing that balance back, then they'll be like, "Oh, well, we don't need to work so hard to do that for you, and we can leave your plant alone." But it's also perfectly okay to say, "Hey, I am the protector of these plants, and they are under my stewardship, and, if we can't come to some kind of agreement here, then I might need to find you a new place to hang out. Like, I might have to take you out to the forest somewhere."
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so that's okay too.
I love that.
For sure.
There's also, it makes me think about I've had a couple foster dogs this year, and
Mm.
one of them was very leash reactive. And so I was thinking a lot as I was looking forward to this conversation. I'm
Yeah.
on a lot of rescue lists and thinking about the people that adopt and foster and how there are these, beliefs about the 333 rule. Do you know what I'm talking about in terms of
I
how
don't.
long it takes for an animal, supposedly, like you have to give it 3 days. You'll see a shift at 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months. For
Oh,
and
okay.
it's a little too generic in my mind, right?
Mm.
Because there is not one formula that's going to work for all beings.
Mhm.
But coming back to this notion of there could be a message behind a seemingly destructive or reactive behavior. and tuning into that, and how we can help, in particular I'm thinking of dogs, how we can help them adjust, and then also how do we listen and be with that behavior.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So this is, I think, when it comes to adopting an animal that's in a rescue situation, there's a couple of things we need to think about. First, if we're looking at this animal as its own being, its own soul with its own soul purpose, it may have more control over the fact that it is in that shelter than you might think.
Mm.
There's the tendency for those of us who really are just so in love with caring for others that we can sometimes see another being in a situation and sort of automatically put kind of that lens of like, I'm the savior and they're the victim of something.
Mhm.
So if we can sort of dissolve that a little bit, then we are already giving that rescue animal the empowerment to be who they truly are as a being. So I find in the consultations that I do with rescue animals that often they are very happy to kind of let go of whatever happened to them in the past. But their humans sometimes are a little bit stuck in the fact that they had experienced some sort of trauma, or they think that the animal has experienced some sort of trauma in the past. And so they're projecting that onto the animal. And animals are so open and sensitive to the emotions and feelings of humans and other beings that they can kind of demonstrate that or continue to demonstrate that. So if we can just baseline, just sort of go with like this being has a purpose, it has its own soul purpose. It may have decided to leave a situation because it was best for it to leave that situation because it has its own autonomy, then already something has shifted, right? Like, I'm sure that everyone can sort of feel that in their own beings, and those who will listen to this, it's like when you can no longer see someone as a victim of something, but instead that they are this empowered being, then already stuff starts to dissolve away from them. Already those like old trauma energy and stuff that might be stuck in their body starts to dissolve away from them. But then there are times when the animal absolutely does need some sort of support or help because they have experienced something that was very hard on them psychologically, emotionally, or physically. From my perspective in working with energy, there's a couple of things that I see. I see that either there is actually stuck energy in that animal from something else or somewhere else that has lodged itself into the animal's body. And that they are very good at showing me where that is and what that is. And I have had so many animals who have specifically come to me in particular because of my ability to clear kind of this interference energy, this foreign energy from them. And so they will just be like, this is what I need. Do it, Jessica. And so I do. And then their humans, their human companions are like, oh, they're so much more happy now. And humans are the same way. Sometimes we get some kind of foreign stuff that just kind of gets stuck in our body that's not ours and it doesn't need to be there. And we just gotta, tell it goodbye and send it on its way. And then there's like a whole opening and the person or the animal is able to, express more of themselves fully as who they are. Then of course there's other situations where maybe the animal has learned a particular behavior or a particular reaction to a situation because they experienced something in the past and they had to develop some kind of coping mechanism. So in those situations, again, the animals are pretty transparent about it. Like, I was cowering in a basement and there was this scary man and I didn't get fed a lot and this is why I developed kind of this anxiety pattern and then once they tell me that and I'm able to relay that to their person, then their person is able to be like, "Oh, well great. Well, I'll let you know when I'm coming and going and I can help you be more grounded." And then the animal shifts and they are much more relaxed and much more calm. And I'm trying to think if there's another situation other than those. So the other thing is that this is kind of comes back to how intelligent our animal companions are. Because sometimes they are exhibiting a behavior that we don't understand or don't appreciate. But it's because they're mirroring something that they're seeing in us,
Mhm.
to show it to us. So for them, it may be their way of saying, like, I'm with this human to help this human overcome a particular thing. And so by me demonstrating a similar behavior, it causes the person to have to then do something about it, where then they seek help and support, and then everyone is healed from the experience.
Mm.
So those are kind of the things that come to mind right now are like kind of the things that I see most commonly with the rescue animals and the different behaviors that they they
Yeah.
exhibit that we might not understand.
I'm thinking of a friend's partner passed and their dog is suffering from separation anxiety. I'm thinking about how to not only help humans with their relationship to the beings that they're taking care of when they're about to transition, but also how to support animals when one of their caretakers has passed and how to ease that
Mm.
transition.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, it's a very individual to the animal and
Mhm.
very individual to the person who has passed from their body. A couple of examples kind of come to mind. Sometimes an animal will be exhibiting behaviors that we think seem like anxiety, but they are actually just the the animal mirroring humans that might be around kind of grief process.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that could be going on. I would say animals in general are very connected to the non-physical world, and so they don't necessarily experience the same level of feeling of separation when a loved one has passed on, whether that's a human loved one or an animal loved one that has passed on. But that does not mean that they are not experiencing some level of sadness or grief or missing the physical experience of being with their person. Or if it's another animal, like with their other animal companion. So there is sometimes some counseling that does need to be done with an animal that is exhibiting, more lethargy or anxiety or is not coping well with the change and what has occurred. And that often just comes down to letting the animal be able to express how it's feeling and to move through that process. Just the same way that, that we will go to a therapist and say, like I need help with processing my grief. Sometimes an animal also needs help processing their grief. And then the other thing, when humans in particular, though can happen with animals as well, but when humans leave their bodies, there is sometimes some energies that are denser that have a harder time kind of dissipating from the environment after the person has passed from their body. And those energies can stay in the home, they can stay attached to the animal and these kind of denser energies can also create those feelings of intense grief or intense sadness or intense rage or anger or whatever that is. In that situation, then it's just going to somebody who knows how to deal with those kinds of energies and help support the clearing process of the animal or the people or the home or the property to kind of uplift that. Because, humans are we're kind of messy. And we have such profound emotional experiences, and not all of those emotional experiences do we get to fully resolve while we're alive. And some of that residue can kind of stick around. And so it just needs some help to kind of, again, move itself on its way. And that's also very beneficial for the, the humans or animals that have passed, because there might be something that now that they are no longer in a body, that they have a new vantage point. They can kind of look at that experience that they had while they were alive and can see it through a new lens, help them with some of that unresolved kind of energy, and kind of help them to have more wholeness now that they no longer have to have sort of the challenges that being human and in a body bring with it, for
Mhm.
sure.
So dogs they can sense and see being like their caretakers once they've left. They still have that
Absolutely.
connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes you'll see an animal kind of looking in a particular direction, and rest assured, if they're looking in a particular direction and you're not seeing like anything obvious that's like moving, they're looking at something that's non-physical.
Mhm.
And so especially if it was, either an animal or a human that has passed recently, they may absolutely be connecting with them. It's not uncommon for an animal, the more vocal animals, so like, cats and dogs and birds, to also call out to their person or their animal companion who has passed, to be like, hey, I still want to talk with you, and to actually bring them in. Because once a being has left its body, it's very easy for it to come to visit you. It's very, very easy for it to come to visit you. So for anyone who is grieving the loss of a loved one, whether it's a human loved one or an animal loved one, and they're right there ready to be of support and to help you through your grief process and to help you through, whatever it is that you're experiencing. They're right there. So the animals will often, make a vocalization or show a behavior to actually get the attention of the other person that might be in the home, to say, look, they're here, they're here, they're here. And so we might think of that like, oh my gosh, they're so anxious, but really they're saying like, look, he's right there. He's right there. He's right there with you. He's still there. He's still sending his love. He's still sending his support. So, yeah, like the animals, like they are so good at seeing the non-physical, that for them it's just like there's not the barrier the way that there is for us. So, yeah, I mean, my rabbit, like all the time, she'll come and like pull on my pant leg to be like, "Hey, there's something over there. You need to go check that out." And sometimes it's a friend, and sometimes there's some funky energy that I gotta clear out of the space, that they're like, "We don't want this in here. Can you get rid of this?"
And what about reincarnation? I think about cats and dogs and like I mean, and of course people hold different beliefs about
Yeah.
the multiverse or different timelines or past lives or and I'm a believer in both past and multiverse. And in
Mhm.
terms of how animals reincarnate, do they
Yeah.
reincarnate in the same way that humans do? Like how does that work? And how do they find you repeatedly?
Yeah. I'm actually going to bring forward just the information from one of my rabbits. His name is Ari, and he has communicated with me about this numerous times. So I'm just going to take a moment to just ask him if there's something that he wants to share about that, because I feel like the direct information is the best with that. Okay, so Ari, he shares, I have been in many bodies,
Mhm.
many different kinds of bodies. I have been human. I have been a dog. I have been an owl. I understand the relationship of being in the body of a hunter and being in the body of the grazers and the hunted. We have an idea of what we want to be and what we want to accomplish before we come into form. We are drawn to specific circumstances that will aid in our own development and the expansion of our own beings. Some animals choose to stay in the same form for many lives. They like that form, they are familiar with that form. Some choose to explore different forms. There is not one way to be or experience being in a body. Each has its own unique and powerful sets of skills and ways of evolving the soul. And he also shares to transmit to everyone one of the lifetimes that he had in being a human. He was a monk. And so he holds this deep level of stillness and compassion to be able to sit in a still, deep compassion with others. And he extends this to everyone who will be listening to this. And he shares that we are all on journeys together. And so there are souls that kind of pair up to kind of go through an experience together and to learn something together.
Beautiful. Thank you. So we're coming up to time, and I
Yeah.
would love if there was a practice, if you'd be willing to guide a practice for our listeners around how can they attune, connect, listen more deeply to the animals or the plants, could be either one in their life.
Absolutely. Okay, so for everyone who is listening, I invite you to just, whatever you're doing, I know everyone might be listening in very different states, but if you can find the opportunity to sit somewhere where you're still. Now, if you happen to be listening to us while you're in the car, I would suggest waiting on this particular moment until you can pull over. But otherwise, just allowing yourself a moment to get somewhere where you can be still, maybe seated. And then you can have your eyes open or closed. It's okay to do either. If you feel more comfortable with your eyes closed, I ask that you find a focal point in front of you where you can look at one small spot in front of you where your eyes can be soft and relaxed. And if you prefer to have your eyes closed, that's okay too. And once you're there, I want you to just take a moment to notice your face and invite a softening into the muscles of your face. Invite a softening into the muscles around your eyes. And you're going to ask for your facial muscles and your eye muscles to be peaceful. And just allowing yourself to notice what happens when you invite peacefulness into your face and your eyes. And then bringing your awareness to your neck, your shoulders, your arms, and your hands. Inviting them to soften and asking for any muscles that might be a little bit tense or tight to become a little bit more peaceful. And noticing how that part of your body responds to the request of becoming peaceful. Now bring your awareness to your torso, your chest and your belly, your upper back, your mid back, and your low back. Saying hello to your upper back, mid back, and low back. And inviting your back, your chest, and your belly to become a little bit more peaceful. Noticing how your body responds to the request for peaceful. Now bring your awareness down to your pelvis. We're going to do a little walk around the pelvis in a clockwise direction. So noticing the front of your pelvis. Saying hello to the front of your pelvis and inviting the front of your pelvis to become peaceful. Now noticing the right side of your pelvis and inviting the right side of your pelvis to become peaceful. Moving now to the back of your pelvis and inviting the back of your pelvis to become peaceful. And the left side of your pelvis, inviting the left side of your pelvis to become peaceful. Now notice the underneath of your pelvis, your pelvic floor, and invite the underneath of your pelvis to become peaceful. Finally, notice your thighs, your knees, your calves, your ankles, and your feet, and inviting them to become peaceful as well. From this state, noticing your whole body, notice which parts do feel peaceful right now. Honoring if there are any areas in your own animal body that do not feel peaceful. And that's okay. But from this place of greater peacefulness within ourselves, we start to tune into our ability to connect with other beings. So I invite you now to bring your awareness into the center of your chest, where your heart energy center lies. This is the center of telepathic receiving and giving of information. This is the place where you can open yourself to the sensations, the feelings, the thoughts of another being. So for this moment, as you connect into your own chest center, Imagine it opening. Imagine yourself becoming more receptive to receiving. And from this place, create a heartfelt intention that you can connect with an animal or plant friend that you love and appreciate. This could be an animal in your home. This could be an animal who has passed from its body and is there with you in spirit. It could be a giant tree that you love, or a beautiful potted plant on your desk. But holding this intention that you can connect with this other being with honor, reverence, and understanding that they are a fellow being with their own beautiful life purpose, beautiful desires and intentions, beautiful wants to express themselves and connect with you just as much as you want to connect with them. They're already there. They have been waiting for you. They have been waiting for your heart to open to receive them. They are there. They are there. They are there. As you start to think about them, as you start to notice them, they will bring through information in a way that you can receive it. They will bring through the information in a way that you can receive it. This may be through a sense of touch, a smell, taste, a sound, a vision, a knowing, or an emotion. Keep focusing on this plant or animal. Keep connecting your heart to theirs. Give yourself this moment. I'm going to be quiet for just another moment to allow you to receive what is coming to you. Notice how there is an unraveling happening in your being. The places where you once may have felt blocked are now opening. It is your birthright to connect with other beings this way. You have always had this ability. It has only been in the background, but now you are open to receive it fully. It is yours to claim. You do not need another to connect with those you love. That animal, that plant, you can have direct one-to-one connection between you and them. If you are feeling that sense of connection with them, in whatever way it has come through to you, now ask them the question, how are we the same? How are we the same? How are we the same? Hold this question in your heart and imagine it going from your heart directly to your animal friend or your plant friend. How are we the same? I'm going to give you a few more moments to receive their answer. Now, in your heart center, I want you to bring in your own feeling of gratitude. See if you can cultivate this gratitude growing deeper and bigger and more expansive in your heart space. This gratitude for this being that you have just connected with on a soul to soul level. Let it expand the front of your chest, the sides of your chest, and the back of your chest, past your spine. Then imagine your whole being held in this sense of gratitude. And then share this gratitude. Whether your animal is with you in the room, or they are a little bit away from you, or they are in spirit, or the plant is right with you, or it is a plant or a tree that you have known in the past, I want you to expand your feeling of gratitude until it can reach to that being. And with your inner voice, you can say thank you to them. And now gently start to bring your awareness back into your own body, noticing your head, your face, your neck, and your shoulders. Noticing your arms, your chest, your upper back, your belly, your low back, your pelvis. Noticing your legs, your shins, your calves, ankles, and feet. Give your head a little wiggle, your shoulders a little wiggle. You can move your arms. You have the space where you are to do that. Letting yourself come fully back into the room. If your eyes were closed, you can open them. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for connecting with your animal and plant friends.
I thank you so much. I have Toshi, the dearest being in my life, sitting next to me. I have 7,000 square feet of property, and 6,000 is the backyard. And in the front of my house is this San Pedro cactus that was planted before I ever moved in. I was gifted some of it, and I had never used it as medicine until recently. And I had planted some and thought that it needed sun, but it actually needs shade. But the interesting thing is that it's all on the periphery of my property. So it's the back fence and the side and then the front side of my property. And it was the being that connected with me. And
That's so wonderful.
this plant, this cactus, is really associated with heart opening and love. And Toshi is just a love being. And so both of them, it was like when I was asking, how are we the same? They were both just expressing, like, you're love. You're just love. It's as simple as that, you know? So I just was like very aware of the fact that this whole space that I live in, and it's really what I want to offer my clients, my offices at home, is this, it is to remind them who they are and that they are love. So thank you for that really beautiful meditation. I really felt that.
You're so welcome. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for being willing to share what you experienced with them. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited to after this conversation to go out and check in with them. And how can people find you? How can people
Yeah.
get in touch? Should they want to dive deeper into sessions with you or work with you in any way?
Yeah. Well, my website is jessicalindsey.com. So it's my name. And there's two different ways to spell Lindsay. So my last name is spelled Lindsey. So jessicalindsey.com. And I offer animal communication sessions, of course. I offer animal and spirit communication sessions. I offer intuitive healing sessions. So there's lots of ways to connect with me, whether you want to communicate with your animal, whether you want to develop your own intuitive abilities. And also, if you just need support for something you're going through in your life, going through a particular transition in your life, my skill set is really to be able to sit kind of in the depths of the fire of transformation with people, really in those moments when things have gotten difficult or challenging, and they need someone to hold them on a deep level through an experience. And also, I also work sort of as like a death doula for animals. So part of the work that's really powerful and meaningful that I do is to help animals and their people when they are getting close to their end of their life, to be able to communicate the desires that the animals have around their end of life care, how they would like or not like support related to leaving their bodies, what sort of ceremony they may like to experience, and that whole transition process. So all of those things are good reasons to reach out if you need support in that way. But also know that as much as I offer my services, just like in this meditation that we did today, you have your own connection that is valid and as equally as powerful as any connection that an animal communicator or any other intuitive or clairvoyant could bring through. So I just want to make sure that no one gives their power away in seeking me out, that you all have the ability to connect with the plants and the animals. And they really, they're kind of like chiming in to me right now just to make sure that they want you to know that they are there and they're ready and they want to share with you and they want to experience with you on the deep levels that you would like to experience.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And it was such a blessing to connect with you. I really appreciate all of your insightful questions and helping to guide this session and holding space to so that I can bring through this information to everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. If you appreciated this episode, my online course, Pathways to Peace, Mindful Practices for Transformative and Vibrant Living, is open for ongoing enrollment. This means you can sign up at any time. It's a self-paced course to make it manageable with your schedule. And as for the coursework, you'll receive 4 weeks worth of daily videos where I teach you how to understand your nervous system and its reactions, how to think more clearly and gain perspective, how to transform the ways your body communicates through physical sensations, how to identify emotions, where they come from and what they're telling you, how to discover why you react in ways that produce shame and learn tools to manage these reactions, how to reduce your anxiety and destructive impulses, and how to diminish self-hatred when you are not your best self. You can also sign up for weekly group coaching calls where you'll have direct contact with me and I'll answer any of your questions. If you want to learn more before then, and hope you do, you can go to my course page, courses.charnacassell. That's CharnaCassell.com for more information. So if you appreciated this episode, please like, rate, and review it and share it with your friends. If you'd like to stay connected, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at LaidOPEN Podcast. As well as if you go to charnacassell.com, you can join my newsletter where you can get information about upcoming courses I'll be offering, and I do free giveaways. Plus, you'll get discounts as well as resources that I share. At passionatelife.org, you can get more information about my private practice and the kind of work that I do. This has been LaidOPEN Podcast with your host, Charna Cassell. We all have different capacities, but I believe in our capacity to grow and change together. Until next time.